I'm Colleen Wilson. In a few minutes, we're going to be paying to the fabulous, iconic artist Joni Mitchell. Before we start the program, though, we're going to listen to some great sax sounds from Gregory Edmonds. Wow, here we are. Well, I want to welcome everybody to this wonderful day. It's been a while coming, but everybody is super excited to be here, as am I. I want to welcome everyone who's in Canada, Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis, and we are thrilled to be here today to celebrate the work of Joni Mitchell, who people will know had her formative years in Saskatoon. And I want to say hi, a very special hi from all of us, so I'm waiting for a big cheer. Joni and her friends are watching today via the World Wide Web, and they are celebrating, and I'm told, having tea and scones. So we want to say hi, Joni. Well, this is truly a historic occasion, because how often do you get to honor somebody who is an icon? Just an amazing, this has been an amazing journey for us, and to think that we are putting this first plaque up today as part of today's festivities. We'll be moving to the river a little later in the day, and we just want to let everyone know there'll be in the live feed, there'll be a little bit of downtime while we get repositioned after we've done the installation and dedication of this plaque on Broadway Avenue. And then we will be moving downtown. We're probably going to be going indoors for that. We might be expecting a little rain, but we're not going to let anything dampen our enthusiasm here today. And we just want everyone to know, if there's a little bit of downtime when you're watching on the live uplink, that we'll be back at 2:30 with the festivities on the riverbank. So it's an exciting day. I know that on Broadway Avenue, Joni Mitchell's spirit has always been a part of this street that has such a special culture to it. And now we're simply making it official by the installation of this wonderful plaque that will be unveiled in just a couple of minutes. I've got some thank yous that I want to give, and I'm going to be missing some people because these things don't happen in a vacuum. They are the work and effort of a lot of people. I want to say, first of all, thanks to Ken Ox for his determination and vision for saying, I'm putting this plaque up on Broadway. He started his career here. Joni started her career here, right next door, and there was nothing going to stop him. And then, of course, he talked to the mayor, Charlie Clark, who's our new mayor of the city, and Charlie had a vision as well, said, I couldn't agree more, and he got on board. And Peter Stoichev, who can't be here with us today, but was so much a part of the convocation and the bestowing of the honorary degree on Joni, her Doctor of Letters, earlier in the week at the spring convocation of the University of Saskatchewan. Thank you, Peter, who may well be watching on the World Wide Web today, too. So I like to think of them as the Three Musketeers, and in there promoting everything. I see Jim Hodges in the crowd. He was promoting this. There were just so many people involved, and I want to say a special thank you to the Mayor's Chief of Staff, Michelle Beveridge, for all of her help in facilitating this. She was great. Michelle and I had many conversations about this. I also want to thank Kirby Werchenko. Where is Kirby? Kirby is the executive and artistic director of the Broadway Theater, and they just embraced this right away and said to Ken, yes, let's put the plaque right in front of the theater. The Broadway Theater, for those of you who haven't been to Saskatoon, is an institution in the city, and it is the heartbeat of Broadway. And so we couldn't have selected a better place for this plaque. I also want to thank Tammy Schutte from Pro Touch Engraving, who was with me through this whole process in seeing that these plaques got made, and I really want to thank her. Sherilyn Dixon is here today. She is Joni Mitchell's lifelong friend. You're going to be hearing from Sherilyn later today, and she's really special, and we're so glad she's here to deliver a special message from Joni herself. I want to personally thank Marcy Jensick, who is Joni's personal assistant, and Jane Tanney for their facilitation and helping me to do my part in this. And Les Irwin, who's been the head of Joni Mitchell's fan club, I think, since the early 70s, for facilitating this so that all of her fans could be watching this on live and via Facebook and via Twitter and through her official website. So it's just fantastic that everybody is here today. And last but not least, I want to thank the lady of the moment, the lady of the century herself, Joni Mitchell, for being supportive of these efforts. And we just love you, Joni, and we want you to know that. And we're all just thrilled to be here for all of these festivities today. A quick shout out to my friend Modest Missick and his photographer and co-worker Carter Bryden of Novatech Innovations for making sure that everybody all over the world could see this live uplink. Thanks so much for doing that for us. Well, now to get to the formal part of the program, I'm going to ask City Councillor Cynthia Block, who I've known for a long time through media and all our journey together. Cynthia, she's here today to bring some wishes from the city, and I know, Cynthia, how supportive you are of this. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. Oh, that's too loud. Okay, I'm so thrilled and excited to be here today. And so far it hasn't rained on us, but I have to say that the land of living skies is not disappointing. Nothing like a Saskatchewan thunderstorm watch to add a little liveliness to an important day. So as you know, City Council unanimously endorsed these tributes that are going to be happening today. And I think that we can all agree that it's long overdue. And on behalf of my colleagues, we are extremely thrilled that today is finally here. I would like to acknowledge His Worship, Mayor Charlie Clark in attendance, also Councillors Goff and Gersher and Lowen. Are there any others? Put your hand up. That's all I've seen so far. I would also like to acknowledge MP Kevin Waugh is here from Saskatoon Grasswood. So thanks to everyone for being here today. As I said, I'm extremely honored. The woman of today is obviously important for so very many reasons. 9 Grammys, including a Lifetime Achievement Award. And it all began here, like literally here in the hood that is Broadway. From Louis Riel Coffee House to the river, to Broadway Bridge, to what is now known as River Landing. These are the places that inspired some of my favorite work of hers, and I think sits in the hearts of many of us. And so it's important that on this day, we have this opportunity to pay tribute to Joni Mitchell. It's for her friends, her family, her fans, and really for our entire community. I think it's a reminder to all of us that greatness is rooted and nurtured here. I think that's really an important thing to celebrate. Not to reiterate too much, but I really also wanted to thank all of the organizers that made this day possible. As Colleen mentioned, it has been a whirlwind to try to assemble all of the pieces to make it possible. I know it was a labor of love for everyone, but thank you to the organizers. Thank you to the Broadway Theatre for hosting. Thank you to especially Ken Ox and Colleen Wilson for your persistence and making sure that this day happened. Colleen, you have been inspiring in your ability to work directly with Joni Mitchell and her handlers to ensure that every piece of this day is something that she is extremely excited about. So again, thank you to everybody who is involved. And thank you to Joni Mitchell. We are so grateful, Joni Mitchell, for everything that you have given to the world and to our community. I think that for everything that you have done through your music, your artistry, and the champion of many causes, let it be a reminder that we nurture, that we are good to one another. And as we stand here today on Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis, may it inspire us to go forward together in a spirit of reconciliation. Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia, for those great words. Great day today. And I just have to tell everybody, technology is a wonderful thing. And we just received word from Joni. They're enjoying it, and they are enjoying their tea and scones as well as they watch. So now, without further ado, I'm going to ask Jeff O'Brien to come up. Jeff will be well known to people in Saskatoon. Jeff is a well-known historian. He received an undergraduate degree in Canadian history. He kind of mocked that by saying, despite his best efforts, that's what he got. But Jeff is an amazing historian. He received his master's degree in archival studies from the University of British Columbia before returning to Saskatchewan, where he eventually settled down as the City of Saskatoon archivist in 1997. In 2006, he co-authored the book Saskatoon, A History in Photographs. He's written extensively about our city and can often be seen and heard on the radio here talking about the history of his adopted city, a history we're all so proud of. He's a regular speaker in the city's classrooms and at local arts events, and even does the occasional walking tour. And I kind of have a feeling that the plaque here on Broadway is going to become a huge part of the walking tours, as will the plaque down on the river landing. So without further ado, Jeff O'Brien, thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Hi, Joni. So I'm going to talk about the history of Broadway. Before there was an 8th Street, before there was a 20th Street or a Circle Drive or downtown, there was Broadway. Broadway is Saskatoon's first, oldest, and most historic street. Broadway is even older than Saskatoon, which is actually not that hard to do. You've got to consider that the history of the permanent settlement of Saskatoon only goes back to 1883. It's not very long when you think that there have been people traveling through and living in this corner of the South Saskatchewan River for at least 11,000 years. Okay, so Broadway is not 11,000 years old, right? It's venerable, it's not that venerable. But it did form part of the old Moose Woods to Batoche Trail, went from Whitecap to Batoche. And that means that when the Temperance Colony settlers arrived here in the summer of 1883, Broadway was already here. But that year, Broadway became something different. That year, Broadway became part of Saskatoon. If you stand in the middle of that intersection over there, right now, you'll probably get hit by a car. So don't do that. But if you did do that, you'd be standing right at the center, right at the beating heart of the Temperance Colony of Saskatoon. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with the story, a little bit of the Coles notes here. In 1883, Saskatoon was established by a group of people called the Temperance Colonists. They were people maniacally opposed to the consumption of alcohol, hence the word temperance, which of course is from the Latin, translates roughly as people who throw lousy parties. Broadway was the heart of the Temperance Colony, and that's wonderfully ironic because you can't spit on this stretch of Broadway today without hitting a licensed establishment of some kind. Even the theaters on Broadway will serve you liquor in this modern enlightened age. It wasn't always that way, but you know, times have changed. The planners will tell you that Broadway is a complete street. That means it's a walkable mixture of commercial and residential, and partly that's because of an accident of geography. Before they finished the traffic bridge, it was very hard to get across the river. And so if you lived in this part of Saskatoon, you were going to shop in this part of Saskatoon. And so Broadway developed as the commercial hub of this part of Saskatoon. And even when they finished the traffic bridge in 1907, the people who lived here still shopped here. Broadway is still the heart of Nutana, but not just Nutana, because people who live south of Saskatoon, the farmers, the people from the different communities, all the way out to Whitecap and Dundurn, when they came to the city to go shopping, it was Broadway they came to, and it's Broadway and all its shops and stores that they did all their shopping on. So this is the nature of Broadway from the beginning. In 1913, if you were to stand on Broadway in 1913, you'd be standing on a street with a look and a feel an awful lot like what it is today. A lot of residential, there's all sorts of apartment blocks, there's street level businesses with apartments over top, there's houses, but also By 1913, you know, Saskatoon was booming, so was Broadway. The street had really filled in. In this stretch we're in now, this three little blocks of Broadway, in 1913, there were 50 separate commercial listings in the Saskatoon City Directory. And that included 12 grocery stores and confectionaries, 6 hardware stores, a couple of laundries, there were doctor's office, there was butchers and bakers and candlestick makers and harness makers and anything you would possibly need or want or imagine that you would like to have in Saskatoon in 1913 was right here on Broadway. 1913 was the year that they built the streetcar system. So Saskatoon's very first public transit system, the streetcar lines ran right down Broadway. And 1913 was the year they built that building over there, where Calories is today. And that's going to become important to our story in a couple of minutes. By the 1960s, Saskatoon had modernized, and so had Broadway. So the streetcar tracks are long gone by the 1960s, a lot fewer harness makers by the 1960s, and a lot more service stations. Weirdly, one of the characteristics of Broadway in the 1960s is the sheer plethora of service stations up and down Broadway. I don't know why. A lot fewer of those today. Anyway, in the 1960s, let me tell you about the Smith Block. So by the 1960s, the Smith Block had a lot of different tenants. There were offices up there. There was a photographer, had a studio up there for a number of years, apartments, of course, and lots of street-level businesses, mom-and-pop grocery stores and butcher stores. And from 1941 to 1962, that building over there was home of the Broadway branch of the Saskatoon Public Library. The library closed in 1962, and then it became part of something different, because that was the year the Louis Riel Coffee House opened. Now, the Louis Riel was part of a huge, what they call the folk revival of the late 1950s and early 60s. And part of this was these little coffee houses opening up in cities all across North America. We're not talking like a place to go to drink coffee at necessarily, but these were live music venues. They were folk music venues. And they were perfectly suited to the kind of music that they were playing, right? They were small, they were intimate, they were quiet. The performer and the audience are right in each other's laps, which is perfect for a style of music that stresses the message and the connection between the music and the audience. And also, one of the characteristics of the of the coffee house movement was the open mic, the hootenanny, right, where local performers are invited to come up and take their turn on stage. And so it's ideal for a single performer just starting out to come and dip her toes into that little river that eventually took a young Joan Anderson up to the heights of stardom as Joni Mitchell. So a lot has changed on Broadway since the 1960s, but a lot has stayed the same. Broadway's look and feel today is a lot like it was in 1913 or in 1962. The coffee houses are gone, the Louis Riel, the Crypt that was down in the Farnham, those are long gone, but the Broadway Theater is here. And this is important because this is the other thing about Broadway that makes it a complete street. Broadway is the cultural nexus for Saskatoon. Broadway reeks of culture, ladies and gentlemen, and it always has, ever since the Temperance Colony days when the Trounce family used to hold concerts and literature readings and put on plays in their little tiny house just around the corner, all the way through the coffee house era of the 1960s, all the way up today. Broadway is the place to be for arts and culture in Saskatoon. So the planners really are right. Broadway really is a complete street. And I want to end with a quote from a good friend of mine, Don Kerr, wrote an article called Broadway Denizen in Saskatoon History Review a few years ago. And he said, sometimes Broadway is nice, friendly. Sometimes, if you hang out here long enough, it's perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Jeff. That was terrific. Well, now I want to introduce you to the person who is responsible for the vision to have this plaque here on Broadway today. Somebody I know very well, and somebody who I think is going to be a little emotional when he talks about this today, because it really has touched his heart. I want to introduce you to my husband, who's a well-known businessman here in the city, Ken Ox.
You can sure tell who's got gifted the gab in our family. I do way better on a one-to-one as opposed to being in the public eye here. But, I want to thank everybody that's been involved in making this happen. Most of them have been recognized for sure. Kirby, Broadway Bit have been instrumental in us getting here. You know, Joni Mitchell is, you know, singer, songwriter, poet, painter, and recognized around the world. And, you know, it's 5 decades since, plus or minus, actually plus, that she's been here. And she's as relevant today as she was 30, 40 years ago. And that can't be said by very many celebrities. Some people are have their stars. Some people have their 15 minutes of fame. But Joni's deal, you know, is kind of endured. and it's hard to endured for over 5 generations. That's an amazing, amazing feat. You know, she's had worldwide recognition for her accomplishments. My connection with Joni is we just had mutual friends over the years. I knew her in passing as a young kid hanging around the Lakeview swimming pool. But, you know, I always followed her because of her roots here. And how all this event came together is Colleen and I were in Ireland here a year or 2 ago, and we were with a young 26-year-old Irish lady, and she asked, "Where are you from?" and told her. And right away, she snapped out, "Joni Mitchell, she's from here." She, excuse me, she and Colleen started rambling off about all kinds of Joni songs. And the impressive part is this girl, she wasn't even thought of when Joni was doing this stuff. But her music is endured for all of these years. You know, bringing her back to Broadway and having this plaque here was just kind of a personal mission. That for whatever reason, it hadn't happened, and it just bothered me. And so I went to Charlie Clark and told Charlie this is what I'd like to do, and he was right on board. As said, he kind of cut through a lot of red tape for the city, and thank you, Charlie, because without that, we'd still be thinking about what we should have done for her. Peter Storchev, the university president, went to him. Absolutely, he would give her an honorary degree, well-deserved, which just happened last week at the university convocation. You know, Broadway is Saskatoon's version of Yorkville, the Haight, Ashbury area. It was just a happening place, as the people have said earlier in the day here. Coffee houses, music, cars. It was just a happening street. And it just kind of took on its own life and has remained that way for all these years. A lot of areas go into decline, and because of the, I guess, cultural activities here, it just kept going. Like, I've grown up here within 4 blocks of Broadway majority of my life, and looking back on it, Joni, her accomplishments are ones that, being from Saskatoon, it's like we've accomplished something. And I just think that this plaque is a fitting tribute to her and all she's done for us here in Saskatoon, but worldwide, an international celebrity. Now, the other part that Colleen won't get into, but I mean, I kind of roughshod this thing through, but Colleen is the one that worked with Joni, Marcy, and Jane to come up with the verbiage for the plaque, and did all of the communications directly with these people. And to her, without the efforts that she put in, and her talent in writing and helping with this whole thing, none of this would have happened, because for sure, like, I'm like a bull in the china cabinet when it comes to these type of things. But anyway, we're very, very happy that the plaque is here, and we'll unveil it shortly. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. And I can tell you that trying to come up with words that sum up an iconic person like Joni Mitchell on a couple of plaques is not an easy feat, and every word that is on there is absolutely heartfelt by all of us, Joni. We want you to know that. we have someone to speak to us now about this wonderful street again. Kit, there you are. Kit Lowen is, she is the chair of the Broadway Theatre. And again, Kit, we want to thank you and Kirby so much for your support in having the plaque so properly placed at the theatre. As I described, it's the heartbeat of this street. Kit Lowen.
Well, thank you very much. I want to say, Colleen, that as far as board decisions go, this was one of the quickest board decisions that we made to do our bit to advance this recognition. I'm not sure which of these many cameras, somewhat intimidating they are, is the one that is live streaming. There we go. Because I'd like to, it's so intimidating to talk to Joni Mitchell, but I would love to do that. Just before, I'm getting the, thank you to my family for the coaching here. Just before I have some words for Joni, I would like to echo the appreciation that we certainly feel at the theater for the opportunity that Ken provided to us. And as I say, it was a very, very simple decision. It is indeed a huge honor for us as a theater, for the staff of the theater and for the board to be home to this tribute to you, Joni. This pedestal, and I'm referring to it as a pedestal just because of a quotation from an interview that's rolling through my mind where apparently you said, Joni, that you were put on a pedestal that was wobbly, but here I can only imagine you as just being the most solid and grounded pedestal for us. So this pedestal today is such a beautiful reminder of the critical value of the artistic endeavors that you stand for. I think it is an understatement to say that your creative energy fuels our lives and vitalizes our community here in Saskatoon. The journey that brought us here today confirms that, for me, now, right here, is the right time for this honor to you, Joni, for your work and your great gifts to us. The people here are the right people to be here, to witness these tributes. And even the weather feels right to me. The idea that this air is full of potential for energy and crackling and illumination, it just feels right. But most important, I think, for what I have to say is that the place is right. The Broadway area has always been a home, so much more than simply a landing place for artistic endeavors and for the arts, but it's been a true home for the arts. So much artistic expression has been nurtured in this area, and so much innovation has been nurtured in this area. And I know that there are many people here today who know far more about the artistic, creative medium of the Broadway area than I do, but I can't help but think about Buds on Broadway. And I know as soon as I name places, I'll be missing something, and I apologize in advance. But the Buds on Broadway, or the Merry Mansion, where some of us are old enough to remember Humphrey and the dump trucks used to hang out at the Merry Mansion, and Lydia's and Amigos and so on. But so much more than pubs, as Jeff pointed out, that are within staggering distance of one another. But and the Royal Canadian Legion, Joni, you played there according to your website, as well as having played at the Louis Riel Coffee House. So the place is right. It's such an important place for the city. We at the theater are so proud to be a vital part of encouraging the creative energy that you stood for and that you lived your life by. We love to see ourselves as a cultural hub, an artistic hub, a community hub. And so we're not only honored to be home to this pedestal, but we're confident and really committed to the idea that we will continue to be the kind of place where, to quote you, Joni, we can push our artistic activity into odd places that feel a little bit unusual so that we feel like we're stretching out. I also read something attributed to you, Joni, in an interview that you said that when the world becomes a massive mess, it's time for the artists to make their mark. And in recognition of the namesake of the Louis Riel Coffee House, I'm reminded of Riel's words when he said, "My people, when they awaken, it will be the artists who give them their spirit back." So Joni, I had this hunch you and Monsieur Riel were in conversation about that idea. So may this pedestal be one that encourages forever the arts here on Broadway, and may the theater here always be a source of energy for that kind of activity. Thank you for everything you've given us. It's an honor.
Thank you, Kit, for those really lovely words. You know, as I was standing over there, I heard the loudspeaker gently playing Both Sides Now in the background, and I couldn't help but think back to my own childhood and know that that was one of the first songs that I learned. And when I think how young Joni Mitchell was when she wrote that, and how deep that song is, it's just amazing that someone so young, Joni, how did you know those things? It's just amazing to me, the talent there. But it's been recognized around the world, and it's our pleasure to recognize it today. And so now it's time for the moment to unveil the plaque. And I want to thank everyone again for being here, and stay tuned after we do the unveiling. I'm just going to give you a little bit of information about what's going to happen next, because the festivities are carrying on this afternoon. But now it's time for the unveiling of the plaque. I'm going to ask Councillor Cynthia Block and Ken Ox to come up, and Cynthia is going to read what is inscribed on the plaque. And Ken and Cynthia, I'm going to have you do the, Cynthia, come read the language first, and then you and Ken can go do the unveiling.
Okay, the pedestal and plaque read as follows. In 1962, patrons of the Louis Riel Coffee House, once located at 721 Broadway Avenue, witnessed the birth of a legend when an aspiring young painter played her first professional singing engagement to earn what she described as smoking money. Her pursuit of songwriting came from the fortuitous words of her English teacher, who encouraged the blending of her talents in painting and music, saying, "If you can paint with a brush, you can paint with words." And so she did, writing songs and frequently performing at the Louis Riel before leaving her Saskatoon home for a journey that would ultimately lead her to fulfill her destiny in becoming an internationally acclaimed 9-time Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter and recipient of countless prestigious honors. The girl with the prairie roots from the land of limitless horizons took that unbridled spirit with her and became the voice of a generation. Her honesty as an artist defied categorization, writing music described as genderless and raceless, connecting with her humanity in a way that has influenced not only music superstars of every decade since the 1960s, but has touched every generation through her rare authenticity and insight, making her an indelible music icon.
special test. Oh, I'm back up. What a special moment. And you know, as I'm standing out in the crowd, there are people coming up and telling me stories about Joni. And so in these few minutes now, as we get ready to move the festivities across the river, I'm going to ask a couple of people to go up and talk with our cameraman, Carter Bryden, and just kind of share a few stories about Joni. We're going to head out. So if somebody's got something they'd like to share, we're going to do that. And then we're going to head down, and I want everyone to know we're going to walk over the Broadway Bridge. And Sherilyn has told us that that was the way Joni walked to get to the other side. She traveled over the Broadway Bridge as well, so we're literally going to be following Joni's footsteps over to the other side of the river, where the installation of the second plaque will be in dedication of Joni Mitchell Promenade. The festivities will take place inside of the Persephone Theater building, just because we were a little bit worried that by mid-afternoon we might have some rain, and then the unveiling will take place outside of the plaque. But remember, everyone, go into the Persephone Theater building when you get down there. That's going to be scheduled for 2:30. So to all our friends who are watching on the World Wide Web, just give us a little while to reorganize, and we're going to go down there. But we're going to have a couple of words first from some people in the crowd that really have something they'd like to say. So Joni, this is all for you. All right, let's do that. Joni, we've got some people in the crowd that want to see you. You tell your story.
All right. Hello. My name is Noel LeBrash. I attended Aiden Bowman Collegiate at the same time you were there. I think my older brother George was in your class. And I could remember the announcement that you were playing here at the Louis Riel Coffee House. And I came down to see you, and I sat across from you. And in those days, it wasn't even the hippies. It was still the beatniks. And there were beatniks all around smoking, and that's what I liked. I could smoke there. And after you sang, I was the only one that clapped for you. So I was your original fan. And with that little bit of encouragement, see what you've done with that. You owe me. All I can say is thank you, thank you, thank you. May you be well and happy.
Thanks for sharing that with us. That's great. Lots of people there. Everybody's milling around. They're getting ready to go. We got another. Come on over here. Say hi to Joni and all her friends.
Hi, Joni. It's Ray from Ray's Dad's Cadillac. Joni and I were sweethearts late in our teens. Beautiful day, Joni. You deserve it so much. Love you a bunch.
Thank you. Hi, Joni. It's Wayne Reynolds. You and I were in class together in Aiden Bowman, also in Queen Elizabeth. And one of the stories I remember from Queen Elizabeth was when we had to do some creative writing in Mr. Kratzman's class, and Kerry Higgins, another flunky myself, got a better mark in his creative writing than you did. And you were very upset with that. And you went to see Mr. Kratzman after class and said, "What is going on with this? How can you give that guy a better mark than me?" And he said, "That guy has just written the best he will ever write. You are just getting started." And so you were. Thanks, Joni. Enjoy your day.
Hi, Joni. It's Jim Hodges. If you remember, we partied at my place a number of years ago, and you came to town to do the fiddle and the drum with the ballet, with Alberta Ballet. But years ago, you were in town doing a publicity tour, and we didn't know each other then, but I was in the crowd, and I put my hand up, and I suggested that you come and play at the Broadway Theater at the time when it opened up and it became a performing arts center. And you said, well, we would have to talk to your people. Well, I guess we've talked to your people. Here they are. And here you are in front of the Broadway Theater, so congratulations.
Okay, we're going to get ready to move our whole group now over to the Persephone Theater on the other side of the river. For those of you who'd like to walk, we can walk together over the bridge. For those of you who would like to ride the bus, great to have the city involved here because they've given us a bus. So the bus is right over here. So anyone who'd like to climb on board, remember the festivities will be at inside the theater, and then the unveiling outside on the new Joni Mitchell Promenade. We'll see you all down there.
Joni, the only thing that's missing